the ECS KAM1-I AM1 Mini-ITX Motherboard, an AMD Athlon 5150 AMD processor. Cost me $50 in 2015. I paid $25 for the motherboard and $25 for the processor. A nice little combo for Linux spots to back up my FreeNAS file server. I got the ASRock Fatal1ty B450 Gaming-ITX AM4 motherboard for $100. The last cheap B450 AM4 Mini-ITX motherboard available in today's market. In this video, I'll explain the old AM1 motherboard and the new AM4 motherboard. What made the AM1 motherboard unique was the serial ports. 2 built-in serial ports in the I/O panel and 2 serial port headers on the motherboard. 4 serial ports on the motherboard were quite unique. The motherboard only cost $25. If I was to get a replacement motherboard with serial ports, it would be the Giga PC MITX-4105A. 2 built-in serial ports in the I/O panel and 4 serial port headers on the motherboard. A total of 6 serial ports. That motherboard with an Intel Celeron quad-core processor costs $199. What's the big deal about serial ports? A motherboard with built-in serial ports running Linux can be a serial console server. If you have a rack of switches and routers, the console ports of those devices can plug into the console server. You can remote into the console server and open a terminal window for any device. One of these days, I'll put the AM1 motherboard into a rack-mounted server case. As for the rest of the AM1 hardware, here are the specs. Athlon 5150 quad-core processor at 1.6 GHz, G-Skill 8 GB, 1600 MHz DDR3 RAM kit, Arctic M1 AM1 passive air cooler, Seagate Barracuda 8 TB hard drive, ADATA SP550 120 GB 2.5-inch SSD. The Roswell RD450G 450 watt non-modular power supply. A Cougar QBX Mini-ITX case. The AM1 processor with the budget option for the AM2 Plus and AM3 processors. The budget processors were for lightweight applications like web browsing or command line Linux. The Athlon 5150 with the low-end version that cost $25. Before the AM1 motherboard goes into my junk box, I will test it with the Roswell PB-240 AIO liquid cooler. I'm going to answer the age-old question whether the AM1 processor with a 25 watt TDP ever needed an AIO. Make sure you subscribe and turn on the notification bell to see that future video. For backing up my FreeNAS file server, the AM1 motherboard and processor was an affordable combo. I wanted to replace the AM1 motherboard with an AM4 motherboard. For a month, I couldn't find any cheap B450 AM4 Mini-ITX motherboards for $100. Expensive B550 AM4 Mini-ITX motherboards for $200 to $300 were still available. The B550 chipset won't run the older processors I have, the Athlon 200GE, the Athlon 3000GE, and the Ryzen 7 2700. The ASRock Fatal1ty B450 Gaming-ITX AM4 motherboard for $100 became available 2 weeks ago. I pulled the trigger since this could be the last cheap B450 AM4 Mini-ITX motherboard for a while. I spec'd out the AM4 motherboard like the AM1 motherboard as a drop-in replacement. Athlon 200GE 2-core/4-thread processor at 3.2 GHz. G-Skill DripJaws 5 8 GB 2666 MHz DDR4 RAM kit. Arctic Alpine AM4 passive cooler. Team Group 128 GB SATA 3 M.2 SSD. Except for the motherboard, processor, and memory, the rest of the case stayed the same. Wiring the AM4 motherboard required 4 changes from the AM1 motherboard. Plugging in the 8-pin CPU power cable, moving the power connector for the 120mm fans from the top connector to the bottom connector, removing the USB 2 to USB 3 adapter to plug in the USB 3 cable from the case, removing the serial port bracket since there are no serial port headers. The only configuration I had to change in Linux was changing the IP address from dynamic to static. That's it for today's show. Please comment, like, and subscribe, and turn on the notification bell to see more videos like this. Thank you for watching.